Okay. Well, let's start with this. I suspect you're not going to be down here by the time they arrive, but as you know, some kids in high school are stepping out of school to come downtown to voice concern about what is or isn't being done on climate change. What would your message be to school kids who don't think the government is doing enough to take the issue seriously?
Well, I think it's important, first of all, that they continue to exercise their voice, make sure that not only government, but all Nova Scotians know how important this is for their generation. I would say to them, that Nova Scotia is leading the country when it comes to the greenhouse gas reduction. The investments that we're making with Efficiency Nova Scotia to continue to help reduce our own carbon footprint is an important step. That not only are we doing in the urban centre, but across our province. And we will continue to lead the country, but their voice is important to be heard.
So do you support a walkout by kids?
As a parent of 2 children now who are grown, I always preferred when they were in class.
But clearly their voice is important, needs to be heard, so...
There's all kinds of ways they'll make that decision, but I quite frankly, in my view, that kids should be in class. But they'll make that decision. Parents who with them will make that decision. There's many ways their voice can be heard. I met with some young people 2 nights ago here. I met with some yesterday at a school. There's all kinds of ways to exercise their voice, but I would prefer that they continue to use that class time to be learning.
So whether or not they lead whether or not Nova Scotia leads the country in terms of environment action, what other marker could we be looking at, because they're saying that is insufficient?
We'll continue to improve. No one in the House has said, nor has anyone in our government said that we're satisfied. It's why we continue to make the investments. It's why we continue to lead the country, continue to reduce our footprint, to continue to make investments with Efficiency Nova Scotia, allowing municipalities to be able to work with their residents to be able to green up their own footprint through here in the city with solar panels that they can use and pay off on their tax bill. All those are important steps, but no one's satisfied until we continue to reduce it.
You were asked during question period about the Cobequid Pass, and if things go according to plan and the finances are taken care of this year, is there a reason to not take off the toll?
I think it's 20. I think the time it's 2020. I think not this year. I think it's next year. What we have said is for Nova Scotia residents that toll will be removed. What we haven't finalized on is what would happen in terms of tourists and truck traffic.
So do you see that as potential? Like, I'm thinking of, for example, when you go to Florida and they've got those cameras and they read the license plates. Are you thinking of a situation like that, or are you thinking the tolls would still need to be there and it would be up to the toll booth operator to determine who pays and who doesn't?
Well, first of all, we have to make a final decision on what will happen. But I don't. If we continue down the path where there would be a toll for the tourists or truck traffic, I would envision that the toll booths would still be there.
And is there a time by which you would like to see your government department make a decision on that?
Yeah, once we get closer to when the deadline is and around when it will be paid off. But I do think it's sometime in 2020. I'm not 100% sure. Of course, the minister would know better than I, but that would come back before Treasury policy.
Premier, we talked a lot about yesterday about the kind of things you're doing to try and get offload times better and to alleviate the overcrowding in ER. But the NSGU said on Wednesday the nurses were so backed up at the HI that they wanted to declare a mass casualty event. Have you been briefed on what happened there?
No.
Okay.
So
are you concerned?
Obviously, I mean, that's the minister. Again, I want to repeat this. I didn't question here, but the only party put together a health committee that's having this debate in public, on camera in the main chamber. Of course we are, and the minister has directed the health authority, his department, to work with the EHS, and I was very encouraged yesterday with Jeff Fraser, who was here, talking about the fact that they should see a marked difference as we continue to move forward, and the things that we're doing are making a difference.
But is there anything you can do in the meantime to kind of stem the flow now, or?
Well, the minister would be dealing with that. I'm sure I don't know what steps they've taken referring to what happened on the particular day you're referring to, but we're continuing to work with our partners to try to improve people's experiences. The offload time is part of that, long waits in emergency rooms. But many of this goes back to access to primary health care. How do we ensure that people have access to primary health care, that those who are presenting themselves to an emergency room as an emergency, and the ones that require primary care have another portal to actually access that primary care?
That dovetails quite nicely into my next question, which was...
That's what I'm working with you, John.
At what point will you start to open up more of these collaborative care centers?
That's ongoing, and part of it is not necessarily a new physical footprint. Some of it is actually collaborating, bringing docs together, or adding a healthcare provider to existing models that are out there. For example, the physician that I see in the Valley, he's not in the same physical footprint of the collaborative care team that he's with, but they're connected electronically. We've seen where we have a number of docs that are together. We want to add either a nurse practitioner or family practice nurse as part of that. So it's not necessarily a new footprint as much as it is in making sure we have the right teams in place.
Right, but there are still gaps, right, in certain parts of the province.
Oh yeah, no, there's no question. We have, through retirements, people are, we have that. I'm feeling it, quite frankly, in my own riding now. I have a number of docs who've either retired or are ready to retire. And we have, all of whom have big practices. How do we best complement that? But I've said this many times, this issue has been like squeezing a balloon. We solve it in one place and it pops out somewhere else. Part of that has been, quite frankly, that we have not, for whatever reason, I've been here 16 years and through all three parties, has not transitioned to what is this new model where people want to work in. So now we're in a case where we're competing in a global marketplace looking for not only physicians, but ensuring that we have the appropriate nurse practitioners, family practice nurses. In some cases, a social worker as part of how do we deliver primary health care at the same time working with families on the determinants of health.
Premier, why haven't we moved to a more Quebec model, which is basically the province runs and funds the clinic and the doctors work there rather than having all these private businesses?
Well, in some cases we do. In some cases we'll own the facility. We run them. In some cases, though, that's the model we've had. Doctors who are private business people, they want to continue to operate their own facility. So, but it is a blended model that's happening. There are communities where we literally own the footprint and we renovate it. We pay the bills and the physicians go to work there.
Mr. Premier, we've been hearing this morning about this mass shooting at a mosque in New Zealand. I know that Muslim communities in particular are feeling quite shaken by this. What would be your message to those communities in Halifax and Nova Scotia?
Yeah, first of all, when you hear this, you're devastated by what's happening in the families. What I would say to the immigrant communities all across the province, not just the Muslim community, how proud we are that they've chosen to live in Nova Scotia, and how grateful that I am, as the Premier of this province, that Nova Scotians continue to pour out in an inclusive way. We don't have to look very far when we had the tragedy here with the Syrian family, where the children were all lost, and the outpouring of love and compassion and caring from our citizens was remarkable. While we are, the tragedy happened globally, we see in a number of communities, I'm really grateful that the way Nova Scotians respond.
Are you worried about something like that happening here?
Listen, Nova Scotians, as I said, are caring, compassionate citizens, and I'm very confident that we'll continue to do what we have done for generations, which is continue to be an inclusive, abrasive province where we actually enjoy and welcome diversity. I think Canada is recognized globally for that, but also Nova Scotians are recognized for the way that we respond. And we have not an attack like this, but we obviously just had recently in our own province a real tragedy that we lost all of the children of a Syrian family. And Nova Scotians did what I would expect them to do. They responded in a loving, caring way.
Thanks, Premier.